not doing it right.
Did you forget the words again?
Yes.
Focus.
Come on!
Focus.
Welcome to Video Game Book Club, the show where we pick, we play, and we discuss a video game each and every month. I'm your host, Juan Pablo JP Gomez, and your co-host is always Benjamin Tizzle Tubes. And Ben, I thought I wasn't going to be able to get through that intro. But then I focused, Ben, and I got through it.
Yeah, you focused, dude. Well, listen, if you thought that was hard, imagine what our girl Senua was going through. Like, come on.
Imagine what our girl Senua was going through. Poor girl. I felt so bad at the time playing. Yeah. But Ben, wait, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about Senua's Sacrifice, Video Game Book Club. If you're new here, we pick a new game every month. We play it with our community. And at the end of the month, we do a podcast, which you're listening to.
What?
That we come on, we kind of recap the game, we talk about our thoughts, we answer questions that our viewers and our listeners have submitted. We have such a great community. They always come with such incredible questions, and we have a lot of really good ones today. And yeah, we kind of just go through the whole thing. So last month's game, we played through Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice.
Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. And Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice is a walking simulator that is disguised as a puzzle adventure game that has a lot of trauma and mental health issues sprinkled on top of that beautiful pancake. Does that sound fun? It kind of was a little bit fun, but it actually is just like how it sounds, honestly.
It's equal parts fun and also like extremely stressful to play. So.
It was very, very stressful to play. I had the advantage, c'est un avantage, that I can't get that sound from Expedition 33 out of my head, that I streamed the game. For the first time, we've streamed the game, and the people from the community were watching, and they were kind of like they were accompanying me as I was experiencing all these different sensations.
So Senua has like the voices, the furies in her head that are kind of doing that, and you had the Twitch chat.
Exactly.
Those were the voices in your head.
It was like the voices in the head were saying, "You can't do this, you suck," and then the Twitch chat was saying, "Bro, you're not seeing the runes. Like, how can you not do this puzzle? You suck." And I was like, "Oh my god, this is not good," which is funny. But obviously, the game has a lot of puzzles. It's a really good looking game. It's the game is from 2017, and honestly, 2017 it's only 8 years ago, bro. It's not that long. Like in terms of gaming, PlayStation 4 Pro has incredible games. Xbox One had really good games. Nintendo Switch had Breath of the Wild, had just came out. So there's really, really good looking games out there. And this game, you can tell the cinematics and those like moments feel genuinely really, really good. Still.
Maybe a hot take, but I feel like that this kind of era when this game came out is when the like photorealistic graphics started to like plateau a little bit.
Oh, you think?
I feel like from that point on, everything has looked like it's been hard to increase the visual fidelity, which is probably partially a hardware thing, but I think recently there's been some games that have come out that look probably a step above kind of this era of games. So. But only recently. Like I really feel like, the past, 5 years or so before now, starting really with games like Senua's Sacrifice looked, pretty good. So
it's one of those things that like the scenery looks really good, but whenever I'm in a river of blood fighting 100 waves of monsters and all the like little specks of water are flying around, they look like squares, they're like pretty badly pixelated. So in some moments I agree. I think they look really, really good. But in other moments I was like, okay. The one thing that I was gonna talk about it as we go through the story of the game, but you know what? I'm just gonna bring it up now since we're talking about it. Is so we played Expedition 33. If y'all are new and you're listening, we went through that game already. We did Avowed. That's another AAA game that we've done. Expedition 33, sure, any of the game, whatever. But in terms of like how they look, Senua, the character Senua, looks incredible, and her emotions are so good because she was fully acted by someone, by an actress. And so
Yeah.
she has these moments in the game where she's in so much pain, and her screams, her yells, her emotions come through so alive. Like they are so alive. You feel like you know her. You feel like you're watching a movie. Whereas in Expedition 33, it looks incredible. But sometimes the characters would talk and you couldn't really tell what their emotion was based on their face expressions, and even worse with Avowed. So that was really, really well done. Obviously, you can't live act every single character in your video game, but you know, when you have one protagonist, we should still do that. We should do that. Like Norman Reedus in Death Stranding. I know you're playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. JP, why don't you walk me through like the first 10-15 minutes of Senua's Sacrifice? What was give me the setup. What was your first like experience with this game?
Well, so the first 10 to 15 minutes of Senua Sacrifice, you don't even have to use your remote. You can just set it down, and you're looking at a basically, if you think about, and I think media should go back to this, but if you think about like early 2000s and late 90s movies where you had like a 5 minute intro scene, and you would see all of the credits from like the director and the actors and the producers and all of that, you get that with Senua Sacrifice, as Senua is on a little makeshift kayak that she's made out of like wood logs, and she is traveling across it looks like an ocean, you know. We'll get into that, where she's going to and from, and she's basically paddling her like makeshift kayak. You immediately get hit by like a lot of voices, these voices that are we're gonna talk a little bit about it, but like the game uses binaural, I don't know how to say it, man, 3D
Yeah,
binaural
no, you got it.
sound.
Binaural, yeah.
And you can tell, if you play this game with headphones, where and how far away these sounds are coming from, as if they're people in the room with you. And you get hit with a lot of quips from these voices that Senua has in her head as she's making her way. Credit scene, game looks really pretty, and then you land in this, you know, place that you don't know where you are. And the first thing that I noticed, Benjamin, Senua weighs. She's heavy. Not Senua the character, but Senua as in the gameplay.
Okay,
I haven't played.
Like, man, okay.
I haven't played a game again, like a third person over the shoulder game from this era in a little bit, and the weight that the character has as you move around immediately hit me. I was like, oh my god, she's so slow, and the movement feels really, really slow and feels really, really heavy. Although I'd have to say I was really impressed with how she trots, if that makes sense. Like when Senya's like kind of like jogging like forward and backwards and left and right, like her movement feels really good and really natural. With some games, sometimes when you're like, you have the camera behind them and you're moving them backwards and they kind of look like they're having trouble walking backwards. Senua, nothing like that. The animation is crisp and great, but the weight was horrible, dude. So that, honestly, that was my first 10 to 15 minute impression. It was like, oh, I'm gonna watch a movie, cool. Oh, let me move my character. Oh my god, she is so slow.
Yeah, that first kind of segment of the game is a lot of what it's basically the game in a nutshell. Well, maybe not, but it's the game kind of telling you what you can expect. Like for the rest of the experience, pretty much, you're gonna have a lot of walking.
A lot of walking.
You're gonna have the voices in your head. You mentioned the binaural audio. You know, if you're not familiar with it, maybe like, you know, there's the people that do like ASMR with like, you know, the little taps and stuff like that. And they use these headphones, or they use microphones that essentially are modeled off of like the human ear. So I guess the idea is that, you know, it can record from multiple angles, and I guess maybe, you know, the audio waves kind of bounce around the microphone as if they would in the ear. And so that kind of theoretically creates, you know, a recording environment that when you listen to sounds like you are in the middle of, right?
Yeah.
And it's really effective at that. Like, it's really, you know, like you said, it feels like you can tell, you know, spatially where the things around you are. And so the game is really introducing you to what's basically a main character, which is that binaural audio. And you've got the voices in your head floating around. So
And that's why you can immediately sympathize sympathize for Senua, because she is perceiving these voices at all times in her day-to-day life. And just as we can think, oh my god, that voice is like, 9 o'clock 10 meters that way, she feels that in her everyday life, and you can kind of sympathize with her a lot because of it. But so Ben, we go through the boat sequence. Yeah, the credits happen. We are introduced to kind of like the game, and then you land. And what's Senua doing? What is she there for?
Yeah, it's a little opaque at the beginning. So she lands. The voices in her head are telling her like, we have to go back. Like, you're not cut out for this. We need to go back. And Senua kind of has a moment where she like breaks the fourth wall almost and like looks at the camera. But, I guess in the game world, she's kind of in her head, she's addressing the voices in her head. And she's like, we're not turning back. And she kicks the boat away. So her escape is gone. She's here. Only way to go is forward. Yeah. So, she starts to go through the swamp. She's making her way through the swamp essentially. And there's a little bit of, I don't know, like there's not a ton of setup here. There's this narrator that seems to be separate from the voices in her head. And the narrator is making reference to somebody that she's looking for. It's seemingly a man, like someone that she's looking for. She's come for him. But there's not a lot of information besides that. So you make your way through the swamp and you get to the end of it. And as you get to the end of it, you notice, or maybe you have noticed, that something kind of orb shaped has been bouncing around on Senua's hip this whole time. And as she reaches the end of the swamp and begins to approach this structure that we're going to come to know as Helheim, this thing on her waist kind of starts like rattling around and almost calling out to her. And through this, we kind of realize this is the severed head of somebody that she knows that is calling out to her and is kind of, I don't know, beseeching her in some way. And so the game is really setting you up here, and you've got the voices in your head. There's like a moment in the swamp area where the surroundings get very like hectic and scary, and things are like kind of all bearing down on you. And now we're talking to a severed head. Like, there's just a lot going on here. There's
a lot going on.
It's interesting.
And as you walk, you find these lore stones, these statues, I kept calling them. And when you kind of quote unquote focus on these statues, a different narrator pops up and tells you the story of like Nordic mythology. And so the first story that you get, every area has a story. By getting all the stones, you get the full picture. So the first kind of quote unquote story that you get is the different kind of like areas, or I guess escapes of the Nordic world, which is, you live in Asgard or whatever. Maybe I have it wrong. And then you're going through all the Heims, Midgard, and then there's like 7 Heims, and one of them is Helheim. And you know that Helheim is like the afterlife, or kind of like the underworld in like Greek mythology or something. So you know that, okay, I'm Senua, I'm a little crazy, and I have a severed head strapped to my belt, and I'm going to hell, basically.
The underworld.
The underworld. So, you kind of put 2 and 2 together. Okay, I'm about to go find this person. Like, this person's clearly not alive, and I am going to go find them, maybe try to, like, get to them, revive them, or do something. So you kind of put those 2 things together. You're like, cool. Well, how am I going to get on that bridge? You can't just, like, hop on the bridge to Helheim. And so it says, hey, you have to find another way. There's a secret passage. Cool. So you get introduced to the first kind of puzzling mechanic of the game. You kind of go around a little area. You like do some slight parkouring, but you're not really actually doing anything. You just press the button and then the character does it for you. And then you find a closed gate, but this gate has a symbol, a rune on it. And there's a voice that tells you, you have to focus. And it's like, okay, you press the focus button, and then from your now enhanced vision, you can make up that rune and it becomes kind of like a receptacle in your screen as if you're playing like some sort of FPS game. And you need to find this shape. I think the first one's like an M kind of looking shape, and you have to find this shape in the area surrounding you. So maybe different like tree branches will like as you change your perspective will look like that rune, or maybe like some I don't know, shadows or something will look like an M on the floor. And this is the introduction to the main puzzle mechanic of the game. Senua is going to be literally gate kept from areas because of these runes. You have to focus on the runes, walk around areas and find them. And that's basically the 80%, 75% of the gameplay of this game. So you do that, and then a spirit appears, and the spirit introduces himself as Druth, and you and Druth apparently know each other from your life, I guess. But Druth is clearly he's a spirit now, so he has passed, and Druth tells you that he will accompany you in this journey, and he will try to teach you everything that he knows about the Northmen. But he speaks about the Northmen in like a very, very negative way. And Senua responds about the Northmen in a very negative way as well. So you say, okay, both of them hate the Northmen. They're both buddy-buddy. They know each other from like their life, I guess. Let's get it. Let's get Druth in there. And Druth is a really, really, he's like the comedic relief a little bit of the game. He acts these stories really well. His accent is great. You know, he has really, he emphasizes the stories really well. So I enjoyed him overall as a character.
This and it's also kind of an introduction to another tool that the game uses kind of within it. So, you know, obviously Senua is a 3D character model, right? Like we're all used to seeing in video games. But certain characters in the game
are 4D.
Actually, right. Actually, pretty much every character besides Senua in the game comes in the form of like a live acted video, pretty much, that's kind of projected into the game world. So it's almost like a little unsettling to see this like real recorded image within the space of the game. And I don't know, I thought it was like a really unique way to kind of portray these kind of memory flashbacks that Senua is having. While
are there memory flashbacks or are they real then? Is it happening right now?
I don't know. We'll have to get into that as we go. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Honestly, maybe it like breaks down to like a budget thing. Maybe they just didn't want to animate all these other characters. But
no, I think it was smart.
I thought it added like a little bit to, you know, the I don't know, ambiance of the game.
There's no, like you said, there's no real character that you actually meet. The whole game, the only other people that you meet are these projected actors, live acted kind of scenes that Senua interacts with. So no, I think it was good. I mean, Senua has psychosis and she perceives and interprets the world in such a obviously unique and terrifying way, and so this is just like an added layer that the game developers wanted for you to also be a little bit unsettled on how you perceive the game. So you end up opening the door. You know that Druth is going to accompany you in this journey, not physically but kind of spiritually, just by guiding you through what he knows about the Northmen. And then you reach another gate, a big gate, and this gate leads to the bridge that you saw at the beginning of the game to go to Helheim. But the thing is, you can't open it. You can open it, but then something else happens. Do you want to walk us through?
So as Senua kind of reaches the gate to Helheim, she is kind of overcome by this, like an episode almost. Like the whole world goes dark and she's just kind of there alone. And she kind of gets confronted by this kind of ambiguous force of darkness that kind of begins to surround her. And she kind of reaches out to try to touch the darkness. But as soon as she does, she's on the ground writhing in agony, and the arm, her right arm that she reached out to touch it with, is inflicted with this like dark black rot that you can like see in the veins of her arms, and that's kind of reaching its way up like into her arm. So it's a very, very effective visual. And this is actually where pretty much the only like tutorial text of the game happens, because the game is very light on tutorials, which I'm sure is kind of something we'll get into as we go. But this is kind of the only real area where this happens, where the game tells you in no ambiguous terms, it like big text on the screen, it comes up and it says the rot will grow every time every time you fail, not
Yeah.
every time you die, but every time you fail. And then it says once the rot reaches her brain, Senua's story is over and your progress will be deleted. And so it's like, oh, okay, that's a little intense. Like I don't know. What was your like initial reaction to this? Because for me, it was like anxiety. Because
Yeah.
we're playing this game for Video Game Book Club. I don't want to get super far into the game and then have my save file deleted like that. Honestly, I think if that happened to me, I might uninstall the game. Like if I were like 3/4 of the way through
Yeah.
and my save file got deleted, I'd be like, all right, see ya. Like that's all for me. So what was your reaction to that?
No, I was immediately started thinking, okay, if I was a game developer, how many tries would I give a player
Yeah.
to die? And then I started thinking maybe a dozen, and so I thought, okay, I have a dozen deaths that I can handle. On the 13th one, I probably will lose all of my save progress. So I was like, challenge on, dude. I'm not gonna die. I'm gonna be really, really good at playing the game. Of course, the anxiety and the tension is there, and it creates this atmosphere when you play the game that it's good. It definitely enhances the experience having that there. But yeah, I just started making sure that I was counting how many times I had failed.
Yeah.
Assuming that the first time, which is this next one that's about to happen, is doesn't count. That's what I thought. But
Right.
no, I thought it was fine. I was also playing the game on hard mode, and so it kind of gave me like an extra little bit of, okay, I definitely don't want to die because if it's on hard, I'm gonna experience some of the combat a little bit difficult. And speaking of combat, that's what happens next. So Senua turns around, and then all of a sudden these like figures start appearing, and they take the shape of Northmen. They take the shape of basically these kind of Viking looking people that don't really have a face. They usually are wearing some sort of helmet or some sort of like mask or something in front of them. And then you immediately start fighting them. And just like any good gamer, Benjamin, before you start the game, you always go into the settings and you check the key bindings, and then you swap them all around, because who do they think I am that I'm going to use the trigger buttons in one way or the other way? No, I want light attack on square. I want heavy attack on triangle. I want dodge on circle. I want my parrying on my bumpers. I was locked in. I knew already what the combat mechanic was, because I had checked everything. But you don't get a tutorial. You don't even have a UI or a HUD. You don't have anything. The game is played the whole time without any sort of prompt at all, except what Ben had just mentioned. So the game is clear, just like a movie, and it says, okay, fight these guys. And so you go through a fight sequence immediately. I don't know how you felt, but the parrying felt really good to me. It kind of like, we played Expedition 33, and the parrying in Expedition is very unique. But the parrying in this game kind of reminded me of any other like action, like over the shoulder 3D third person like action game. And so they're very generous with the parrying window, I think. But it also feels really good, because parrying feels really good in every game. So you do a little bit of combat, you like do some combos, but then at the end there's some enemies that you can't hit. They look different. They look like shadows. And so at that point, I kept dodging and parrying and dodging and parrying, and I feel like I went minutes and minutes without dying. But then I realized, okay, I think the game wants me to die now. And then I got hit, and and then you die. The rot consumes you, and then a different Senua appears from behind, looks at the dead Senua, and then there's a message that says, or the narrator says something like, this is the vision that Senua has of what will happen when the rot consumes her. And it's like, ooh, okay, now we know.
Yeah. Yeah, so the game, really just driving home there. This is something you should be worried about. And I think it's, I have like my overall thoughts on it, but yeah, definitely a stress-inducing mechanic. And honestly, I was impressed, and I really enjoyed this first kind of combat encounter. Like you mentioned a lot like about the parry system. And you also mentioned earlier about the weight that the character has, like the weight Senua has. And while that hurts the game in the walking simulator side, I think it works really well in the combat side because
Oh,
it
really?
feels very weighty in the combat. Like the parries feel satisfying, the
Yeah.
dodging and the strikes feel really satisfying. So it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit, that whole kind of character weight.
Yeah, that's true. I felt like a little bit on the combat that I couldn't reach the enemies fast enough sometimes. Like there was like I was like fighting a couple mobs and then there was a third enemy that came, but they're really far away, and I was trying to like run to them, but that running towards them also felt slow or didn't feel as good. But
Yeah.
but I take your point though. I think you're right. It does is in its benefit for like the weight of like a light attack and a heavy attack. But you
Sure.
go through that and then basically there's two things that you need to do. The gate now shows two different runes. One of them looks like a mask, and the other one looks like something else that I forgot about that I already forgot. But then Drew tells you that for you to be able to open that door, you need to go defeat two different beings. One of them being Valraven, who is maybe a god or something of illusions.
Yeah,
A
so
god of
they're
illusions.
both gods.
Okay, they're both
yeah,
gods.
so not
You gotta
just
go
beings. So
defeat
that
gods.
it kind of sets the tone. Like you need to go kill these gods. It's
Yeah.
like, dude, I just got here. Like, okay, I'll try, but
I'm just a girl, you know? I'm just a girl. And then the other one is the god of fire, Suit. I think. Surt. Hard
Yeah.
name to say. And so
It
you have
is.
two options now. You can do them in whatever order you want. You can go on the left is Valraven, and on the right side is Suit. And I went left. What did you do?
I also went left. Yeah, I don't know if there's like if they expected people to do these in a particular order, but I picked left. You picked left. I think everyone that played along with us in the Discord picked left. So I don't know what's going on mentally that we all did that. Maybe the theory I had was basically just that like God of Fire sounds a lot scarier than God of Illusions. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'll start with Illusions and I'll work my way up to Fire.
To me, I thought that God of Illusion sounds more interesting than God of Fire. You
Yeah.
fought Gods of Fire before. You know, there's
Sure.
always a lava level, a fire level somewhere.
Yeah.
But I was like, God of Illusions, I want to do that. But I also think
Yeah.
that I always go left. Like when I'm playing an RPG or something and there's two paths or three paths, I always go clockwise. I go to the left one and then up and down and everything. So I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe that's my thing. But so we both went to Valravens first, and both of these guys have a kind of puzzle gimmick. So the first one, Valraven, it kind of wants to introduce the fact that Senua kind of sees things differently than people in two ways.
Right.
One, there's all these runes that you have to find again to open these doors. But sometimes they kind of like multiply and you can see a bunch of different ones. And this is, again, her psychosis kind of acting up. But the main mechanic is that there's these gates that you go through or that you can see the world or this arcs, maybe like little different arches. And if you walk by them, then it changes the actual environment around you. So there might be a wall, but then if I look at the wall through the arch, it looks like a door now, and so I can walk through the door. And you basically do that for a while. I was calling it it's almost like a racing game. You know, like if you play like Spyro the Dragon, sometimes has some mini levels where Spyro is flying and you have to go through like hoops. That's kind of what this felt like. You just kind of walk around, go through gates, open things, and then eventually you reach Valraven.
Yeah. No, I like that. I will say this was like the first area of the game where I felt like I experienced a little bit of frustration because we talked a little bit about the movement already, but it's honestly very restrictive the way they let you move around in the world. Like this is not the type of game where if there's a like chest level wall next to you, you can climb over it. Sometimes that's the case, but in general, it's not.
Yeah.
So this in certain areas of the Valraven area, you'll be walking through like a trench with walls on either side. And I'm trying to do my puzzles. So I'm like, oh, there's a gate right next to me that I need to get through. man, I really want to climb out of this trench, but I can't. So I guess I have to walk around the entire map to go get back to it. And there's a lot of those instances where, because for these puzzles, you have to go back and forth between a lot of different gates, and they're on like opposite sides of the map with a bunch of walking in between. So I was like, this doesn't feel great. This is like not the most engaging gaming experience.
Some of those are outrageous, dude. Sometimes you like,
They are.
yeah, the trenches. I know exactly what you mean. Some of them are there's literally just twigs. They're literal twigs in front of her, and she can't walk over them. Like, come on,
Yeah.
dude. Like, it was. I agree. It was a little frustrating.
This is also where I died the first time. So
too.
there's an area of this right before the final boss where you have to climb up using the branches of a tree to reach like a nest.
Yeah.
And I I went up, I'm doing the video game, walk across the thin branch.
Yeah.
And Senua starts to like wobble and fall, and you fall and she dies. And I was like, was that supposed to happen? Like, did I mess up? Like, it didn't tell me anything. So I just went right back to the branch and tried again and fell again.
Oh my
And I was like, after it happened again, I was like, okay, I must be missing something. So I went all around the area trying to find something. There's nothing. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go across this branch as slow as humanly possible. And in doing that, I figured out that when she kind of wobbles one way, you have to use the right thumbstick to kind of wobble her back the other way.
Yeah.
But again, this is an area where the game does not tell you this. There's no tutorial text that tells you, hey, when you're walking across a thin surface, help Senua balance. It does not tell you that. It just expects you to figure it out. And that's frustrating in some ways, but I think it also is used here intentionally because they want you to die in ways like that.
I think so.
They want you to die in these kind of exploratory ways because they want the rot on Senua's arm to constantly be in the back of your mind throughout the whole thing. Because they want to use it to create like the same anxiety in you that Senua is experiencing. So
100%. I died
it's really
the exact same way, and I didn't die the second time though. Once I got back on the branch, I was like, okay, I need to do some Tony Hawk Pro Skater balancing right now.
Nice.
And I played a ton of Tony Hawk Pro Skater growing up, so I was like, I got this. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think that's exactly what their intention was. And there's a couple of these type of like, probably everyone died scenarios, everyone meaning players died scenarios sprinkled in the game to keep you a little bit on your toes. And then you have a boss fight. You have a boss fight with Valraven, and it was pretty good. I like this boss fight. I think this is one of the more memorable ones. But then eventually Valraven...
it's where the game kind of introduces like the focus mechanic in combat. Because we've used focus in puzzling, but now there's phases in the fight. Well, Valraven introduces like illusions, and you have to use the focus mechanic to like dispel them. Basically.
Exactly, and then also Valraven can be invulnerable unless you use the focus mechanic, and the focus mechanic is really good because it will come in handy a lot. Basically, time slows down, and you can hack through a lot of enemies when that happens, and that kind of will give you time to recover your health if you've been hit a couple of times. Again, there's no health bar or anything, but you know that like about 4 hits or so in succession will kill you. But if you haven't been hit for like, I don't know, 5 to 10 seconds, then your health bar, let's say, replenishes. And so by focusing, you can kind of heal yourself a little bit. So you go through that and you defeat Valraven, and then you get a mirror. And for now, you don't really know what that mirror is, but this mirror will come in handy and also will kind of teach us a little bit of how Senua perceives the world and how she perceives herself with this through this mirror. The interesting thing about after you beat this area is that you walk back to where you were, where you decide if you're going to go to Valraven or Surt, and you find a face in like next to a waterfall. And if you focus on this face next to a waterfall, then you can see your mom. And your mom, who is also live acted, is talking to you. And I thought it was so funny that the first thing that your mom says to you isn't like, oh my God, it's my daughter, you know? She's like, Senua, your journey that you're about to go to is going to be crazy. And it's like, bro, like, tell me that you love me, you know? Like, if I come back from the dead to talk to my son or daughter, I would be like, I love you.
This is crazy.
Exactly. So I thought that was hilarious. But then, you know, that's like another mechanic that the game introduces. You basically find these shapes around that look like faces, and if you interact with them, you can talk to your mom for a little bit. Or really, your mom talks to you. And then you go to the cert side. And I thought it was one of the weaker part of the games was this area. I didn't really enjoy it that much.
Yeah, I agree. I think we expressed a little bit of frustration around the Valraven area, but the puzzles were like significant.
Yes, definitely.
They weren't crazy, but you know, you had to spend a couple minutes kind of figuring them out. In the cert area, the puzzle essentially, the type of puzzle essentially boils down to, hey, there's a barrier right here, and it's burnable. You can burn this barrier to get through it. And if you go over there, you can set the whole area on fire. And so why don't you just go do that and then come back?
And then come back.
That's pretty much what you do.
And then Senua doesn't like fire, and that's it.
It sucks. So it's not great as a puzzle mechanic, but from it the way they use it is cool, I'll say, because the way it transforms the world, like you're immediately thrust into, like you're thrust into what feels like a burning village where there's voices around you freaking out. People are calling out and crying for help. Everything's on fire. So if you don't choose the correct path, you might end up dying. And the atmosphere they create with the fire is strong, but the actual puzzle mechanic I'd say is not great. So for me, this was definitely a less engaging area than
it was one of those things where, like, whenever I was reviewing kind of like the story of the game again for this pod, I was like, I don't even remember this area that well because it wasn't really impactful in any way to me. But you defeat Surt. It's like a regular fight. He's just like kind of like a stronger regular kind of Northman. He's a god though, but you defeat him and then you've done it. Now the gate has both runes are glowing and you seemingly can go through it. So why don't you tell me what happens when you try to go through the gate?
So you walk through this gate, and it's important to note here that you've kind of been told up until this point that only the dead can cross this bridge that's
correct.
Past the gate. So only the dead can enter Helheim, essentially. So you're kind of wondering, how's this going to happen, basically. But you go through the gate. There, kind of as you go, as you've been going through the past two areas, there's been like some talk from the narrator about, someone whose soul. The narrator starts to referring to the person's soul you're trying to save as Dillion. And so it becomes clear, we kind of know at this point that we're trying to rescue Dillion from the underworld. So now we're going through this gate. Time to cross the bridge. Let's get into Helheim. But you're just met with immediate darkness. And Senua is kind of transported to what looks like, a burning village. Mm-hmm. There's this extremely deep and dark voice that starts talking to you. It's like
insane.
The most bassy voice I think I've ever heard in
It is life. Like, if you played Hades, it's like Hades on crack.
Exactly. And so it's just like whispering these dark things in your ear, telling her that she's never going to leave this place. Her mission is going to fail. It just seems to be like an embodiment of the darkness within Senua, basically. And at the end of this burning village is drawn between these two pillars, drawn up and flayed. The skin on his back has been flayed, is Dillion. So whatever has happened here, we still don't know, but Senua is seemingly returning to this village, and upon her return, she finds Dillion strung up and killed. I guess best guess is by the Northmen.
100%. Yeah, it's a blood eagle ritual, I think it's called, that like Vikings used to do to sacrifice people that they kind of had captured from villages that they pillaged, and then they sacrificed all of them for their gods.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what happened. And Senua is, I mean, obviously, absolutely distraught when she finds
Yeah.
Dillian in that
But
way, as we would all be.
this is kind of the first big like lore drop of the
For
game,
sure.
because
Yeah.
it really like it orients you. It's telling you we are here to save Dillian, and it's telling you the narrator is kind of telling you as well, because Dillian was killed by these Northmen, his soul is now in the possession of their gods. So Senua is
Correct.
basically going to their territory, their, the halls of their gods to try to bring Dillian back. So this is kind of the first big like lore drop of the game that really lets you know what you're here to do.
Exactly. So once that kind of plays out, then you can then cross the bridge. And there's some waves of enemies that come up in this bridge. And the only thing I was going to mention about that is that this is one of the 2 or 3 times that you can kick these enemies off the bridge. And it's so fun to do that because it's hilarious to do that. And so I was kicking every single enemy off the bridge in combat instead of actually like trying to fight them. But upon crossing the bridge, there's like a little area that you have to do a puzzle in, but it doesn't really matter as much. You think you're about to go to Helheim, and you're like, okay, I'm at the end of this bridge, let's get it. But who appears but Hela, who is the goddess of Helheim, and she is it's so scary looking.
Massive.
She is so scary looking. She's huge. She's a muscle mommy, and she's so scary. If you think of like Toy Story 1, that like baby on top of like the spider that Sid creates, that kind of terrifying baby face is kind of what Hela looks like. And you're like, all right, bet we're about to fight Hela. Let's get it.
Yeah.
And Hela absolutely crushes you. I mean, it's just way too easy. She breaks your sword, and then she basically tosses you off the bridge. And after you get tossed off the bridge, you get another kind of like scene as the one we just described. The booming voice talking to you, saying all these like kind of terrible things at you that like you can't do this, you can't do X, Y, or Z. But then once you kind of get back into the game, you see that it's Senua mouthing all of those things to herself through that mirror that you got from Valraven, telling herself that that everything happened because of her. Everything is her fault. She couldn't do it because it was all on her. And that, you know what? You should just end your life because of it. Absolutely. You're not even worth it. You're not worth it. And so Senua tries to find her sword that is broken. She grabs it. It was like next to a torch. So it's like burning hot. And she puts it right on her face. And then she screams in pain. And the screams that the actress performs in this game are piercing. They're one of the best screams, I think, in television, movie, or video games that I've heard. They are piercing, dude. And so once she kind of gets back to, she's clearly hurt, and she kind of walks around in the beach, and then she sees a spirit. And this spirit is calling to her and is trying to guide her. And you think, okay, maybe this is Dillian. Maybe this is Dillian from the underworld somehow trying to speak to me, trying to guide me. And so you start following the spirit in the beach.
Yeah. So you're following this bright spirit. Every time you get where he is, he's suddenly much further down. Classic. You're just following him around. The voices in your head have been going strong this entire time. They have
Always. They never stop. Yeah.
They're when you get to Dillian and he disappears and he's somewhere else, they're like, "How could you lose him? What are you doing? Get after him!" Like it's crazy. But eventually you reach this big tree. There's this really big tree that's kind of out on a little peninsula almost. And the tree is kind of glowing. So it seems like this is where Dillian is. And as Senua approaches the tree, we're hit with this flashback sequence where instead of this dark, dreary world that we've been in so far, we're now in this bright, colorful field of flowers. And Senua is walking through it. And this is basically a flashback of when she met Dillian. Mm-hmm. And the game gives you a little bit of setup here saying that, Senua was kind of a recluse. Her father didn't really let her leave the house very much. But on the occasions that she did get out of the house, she saw this guy, Dillian, practicing his sword moves. and so she kind of emulated him on her own in secret. She was kind of mimicking him, practicing with her own sword, until this time where they finally meet. And so Dillian sees her, doing all these sword moves, and he's like, "Whoa, you're so good with the sword! Like, this is crazy. You should come be a warrior." And Senua's like, she's a recluse. She doesn't interact with people, so she's very awkward. She's very shy. But yeah, so it's kind of a nice moment, and it gives us kind of some lore, some more backstory about Senua and Dillian. It kind of starts setting up their relationship.
And like this whole time, you've been seeing the world through Senua, by the world being dreary, disgusting, gross, wet, horrible, just like a place that you definitely don't want to be in. But this is the first time that you see when Senua was maybe happy for the first time, and that's how she perceives the world. So you now it's in the back of your mind. Okay, what I'm perceiving right now is through Senua, not necessarily exactly what the world looks like. Either in this moment or in general, so you kind of have that in the back of your mind. But basically, what happens here is that there's a sword that is impaled in this tree. And Druth has been telling you a story as you go through the beach of a sword that it's Odin's sword that maybe Fafnir, I think, made. And if you play the God of War games, Fafnir is a character in those games too. And this sword of Odin is so strong that it can slay a god. And so, you're like, bet, let's get this sword, But the problem is you can't take it out of the tree because you haven't proved yourself to the sword / you haven't proved yourself to Odin. To do that, you have to go through 4 different trials. And so there's these little statues that then glow around the tree, and you kind of interact with each one of them, and it teleports you to a different location where you perform a trial. And each trial kind of teaches Senua something, and you also get more information about her story through these trials. And so I have them all written down here. We don't have to go through all of them, but the first trial that I did was the Labyrinth trial. And basically, this one is kind of like if you think about like a haunted house where you're going through like different hallways and you're not exactly sure where the exit is. That's kind of what this is. If you go to the left, you're kind of circling back to the area that you were before. But if you go to the right, you're going to the right way. And it's kind of...
This one was kind of awkward for me because I don't think I ever learned what the game was trying to teach me in terms of the mechanic of the labyrinth. I just kind of wandered around until I found the end, basically. Like I knew what was happening because, as you go, you're kind of lighting torches. Sure. And so, you light a torch in one room and another torch lights up in the room to your left. So it's like, okay, I think if I go there, I might be looping back. But I never felt like I figured out the puzzle. I was just suddenly at the end of it. And I was like... But
a lot of the puzzles in the game are like that, though. They're half done, in my opinion. Because they're not there to really challenge you. They're just there for you to, like, interact with them. Nothing really is that difficult in terms of puzzles. Nothing is, like, super ingenious that you think, haha, I finally figured it out. It's just kind of there. So it's the same way here. Did you play on controller or mouse keyboard? Okay.
Controller.
You can feel a rumble when you're going the right way or when you're looking at the right way. So I felt the rumble and I was like, okay, I need to go there. So you go through it. For me, this one's trying to teach us that all is not what it seems, basically, in Senua. You also learn here that Senua, you get a flashback that Senua tells her dad, Zinbil, that she wants to get out of the village. And obviously he's like, no, you can't do that. And then you obviously know that Senua does leave the village eventually. So you know that she did it under her dad, like behind her dad's back, I guess. The second trial is the Tower Shard trial. And this is one where, like, the puzzle is that you can see the world in 2 lenses. One, the world is nice and pretty, and the other one, the world is ugly. And maybe this is how the world felt with Dillian / how the world feels now without Dillian. Also, we learned that Dillian was a G. The dude was sick, dude. He was so nice. He was like the best boy you've ever met. Is Dillian for sure. Then there's
Yeah.
the swamp shard trial, because of course there has to be a swamp level. And this one sucked because I couldn't get out of that labyrinth. It kind of has the similar labyrinth vibe where you're like being
Right.
chased by this demon, and you have to run around and find the 3 runes. But I just kept going in circles accidentally because I couldn't get out of where I was. Genuinely, I don't know why, but you know, it was like 10 minutes of me just running around. And then
Yeah.
finally, you do probably the most unique and maybe the peak of the game for me, the blindness shard trial, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I thought this was the best of the trials as well. It was really interesting. Basically, Senua, it kind of wakes up in this world of darkness, which has happened before. But we're kind of in this like seemingly underground area, and you can't see anything. You can see very rough outlines of things. But you hear Dillian. Dillian's voice is with you, and he's kind of instructing you how to navigate this area. And so he's telling you, look for, if you're underground, look for the wind. The wind will tell you, where the exit is. So you have to kind of like pan around and figure out, and you'll feel on your controller, you feel kind of like a subtle vibration when you're faced the right way. So you kind of navigate like that. There's also some stuff around like audio. There's areas here where you have to, listen out for like the sound of water, and you have to kind of turn around. And again, this is where the game uses this kind of 3D audio really effectively. You have to kind of listen out for audio because the river is going to tell you, how to get out. And it's also kind of scary because as you get through this challenge, it introduces these like really grotesque like humanoid figures that are like you can never make out exactly what they look like, which I actually think is a really effective way to do that. And yeah, they're pulsing, they're writhing, they're walking around, and you have to kind of navigate your way kind of around and through them to reach the end. So yeah, I thought for me this was definitely the strongest of the 4 trials, I'd say.
Completely agree. This is the strongest of the 4 trials. The other 3 just felt like they were there just to add gameplay and like talk about the story a little bit more, give you the bits and pieces. Like you can kind of like think about the story of Senua as like a photograph that has been ripped to pieces, and every time you go through an area, you maybe find a couple pieces and you're trying to put them together. And at the end, obviously, it all kind of makes sense, but that's kind of, you're just getting fed some more pieces of the puzzle. But you're done, and now you can go and try to see if you can get this sword out of the tree. So you go, Druth is there with you, and he's like, "Come on, baby, you got this." And then you grab the sword, and you do indeed pull it out. But when you do, the whole tree kind of like wraps around you. You're enveloped in darkness again, and you're teleported to a different I hate when that happens. You're teleported to like a different area, and this area is one of the most intense areas that you will be in any video game. You are in like a river of blood, and all around you is these kind of grotesque, like, well, they're corpses, but the corpses are like all burnt. They are charred, but they're hot. They're red hot, They're not like they're not like ashy or anything, and they're all laying in mountains and mountains around you. And you're walking through this river, and you get a huge combat sequence here where you just get fed enemies and enemies and enemies. And this is something that I wanted to mention. At the beginning, the combat is fun. It's pretty good. It's novel. Obviously, anytime you like play some sort of action game, you're gonna have fun the first few combat scenes. But what you expect from a game is that by ramping the difficulty, it'll ramp kind of like the difference in enemies that you fight. And sure, there are 4 or 5 different types of enemies that you fight, but instead what the game ends up doing is they just throw like 15 at you. They're like, we don't really feel like making another enemy, so here, there's 7 enemies. See if you can figure it out, And then you defeat all 7, and it's like, oh, there's 7 more, and then you defeat all 7, and then there's 7 more, and it's like, oh my god, dude, like, it's just a little bit annoying And I just felt like the theme of the game for me is that they had really, really good ideas for puzzles, but they ended up being half-assed and repetitive, which just didn't feel good. Like I feel like the gate puzzle in Valraven was so good, it could have been used better. They just never did because they just didn't really use it again. Then the combat felt really good. Well, okay, let's go deeper into that, but they never really did, you know? And it's just kind of like, man, for me to have fun playing this game, I need to stop feeling like I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, you know? But anyways, that's the thing. So you go through the river and then you find another big lore drop. You see your mother being burnt, and you learn that your mom killed herself because she also was quote unquote corrupted by the same psychosis that Senua has herself. And that was like, whoa, that was crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, like you said, another little nugget here telling you that your mother was inflicted with the same darkness. She kind of had the same psychosis that you did. And an important note here is this is all being viewed through the lens of Senua's father, Zinbel.
Yes.
So he's kind of recapping to you what happened and telling you, listen, your mother took her own life, but it's for everyone's good. This was her way of defeating her darkness. She did it for the rest of us. Kind of like insinuating that you should do the same in some ways. And you're just like, okay, I don't know what to make of that.
And they keep calling her psychosis like her curse and her it's a curse, right? It's not like obviously there's no therapists or anything, modern therapists back then.
Yeah, Zinbel just keeps saying Senua has a darkness inside her.
Inside of her. Yeah,
that's what the psychosis is basically. Is this darkness?
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, we went through the combat encounter, which was basically kind of a tutorial area. It kind of teaches you the new like enhanced heavy strikes you can do with the god killing sword that you just got. If you parry the right way or dodge a certain number of times, you can do like an enhanced strike. So I guess that's like kind of the little buff they give you to counter the kind of ramping up of the difficulty that's now happening in the combat.
And I also died there. That was my second death in the game.
Yeah, I did in a frustrating way. I died like at the very end of the combat, and so I had to do like the end. They actually give you like a checkpoint midway through it, so I didn't have to do the whole thing, but still it was a little brutal.
Yeah, it was a little brutal. But you got the sword now. Let's go to Helheim, Benny.
Let's go. We have got Grammar, the god-killing sword, in our hands, and it's time to enter Helheim. And as soon, JP, you're not going to believe this, as soon as Senua enters Helheim, she's surrounded by darkness.
Whoa,
you're not going to believe it. It's mind-blowing.
What the hell? That's crazy. Where did she go?
Dude, man, I don't know. But so Senua finds herself in Helheim, surrounded by darkness, in this kind of series of hallways. And the hallways are punctuated by like torches or little bits of light from the outside. And what you learn immediately is that while you're in the darkness, there's a beast that's hunting you and stalking you. And if you stay in the darkness too long, the beast is going to get you. And it's very scary. Like when you're running through the darkness to get from area to area, your view starts distorting, everything kind of starts turning red. There's like really intense audio being played right in your ear of the noises of this beast. So it's really well done. But yeah, you're basically kind of making it through there's kind of a small series of puzzles. There's some slight iterations that happen on the rune puzzles that we've come to expect. They're not just in the world. Maybe there's like a tree branch or a piece of iron that's kind of sticking up, and you have to like light a certain torch to cast a shadow onto that thing that can now be used as the rune. So they're doing like a little bit of iteration.
The funny thing is that because the shadow, like I can't be in the shadow, I wasn't even thinking about which torches I was lighting. I just lit everything. And then I was like, I see the thing now. Like it wasn't, it wasn't like, it wasn't super purposeful, like the way that you solve these puzzles.
Right. Yeah. But you make it through kind of a series of of little puzzles and kind of make it through this series of hallways, and you reach the end of it. Before you is a really long hallway, and as Senua starts going down it, the beast, you now see it for the first time, and it's behind you, and it's charging at you.
Oh.
So Senua takes off. She's running. She runs toward a bridge. The bridge collapses. She falls, and as she falls, Dillian's head kind of comes loose from her waist and falls down into this abyss. And
Senua has
not happy.
No. Well, Senua is really, really, really lackadaisical with that head, bro. The whole time I'm playing this game, I'm only thinking about Dillian's head. The dude is being hit every time you dodge roll. The dude is being absolutely flattened by Senua's body every time you do like some sort of like movement, you know, to get across like a ledge. Senua has her butt on the wall, and the head is being smushed on the wall. And the whole time I'm thinking, bro, this head is probably like it's that's like so jelly funny by this point, you know. But yeah, it was bound to happen. The head falls into an abyss, and then immediately you think, oh shit, I gotta go get it, you know. Yeah. And so now you go to get the head, and it's the same thing again. Basically, every time you go to a new area, you just have to do some puzzles, and you do some fighting, and all the puzzles are rune puzzles and some fighting. So we're just gonna kind of keep going with really how the game ends. You eventually get Dillian's head, and the beast that has been stalking you is now there to fight you. And I thought this was the second boss fight that I found very, very fun. I think fighting the beast was really cool. The beast would like hide in the shadows, and then you had to kind of like pan 360 to try to find exactly where it was coming from. And you kind of had, again, the rumble sense from the controller helps you a little bit, or you can use your focus to try to figure out where the beast is coming from, but you only have about a few seconds before it jumps and lunges at you. Of course, you can parry the beast, and if you do, it feels really good. So a pretty cool boss fight, I would say.
Yeah, this was definitely my favorite boss fight, because exactly for the reasons you just said. It incorporates so many of the mechanics that we've learned so far in the game, like, you know, when the beast disappears and you have to use your hearing to like listen for little audio cues in that 360 audio that tells you where it's about to come from. So I thought that was really cool, and I thought that kind of that idea of using those kind of sense mechanics that we've learned could have maybe been like incorporated into other stuff, into other fights and boss fights in the game as well. But yeah, this was definitely my favorite fight in the game, I think.
And you're reunited with Dillian. You got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. And so you use a carabiner and you try to strap him on your belt a little bit more securely. And then it's time to make it to Hela. You kind of have to go up again into like the tower that you're climbing since you went down to pick up Dillian. And there's a series of, again, puzzles where you have to, this bridge is collapsed and you have to kind of use perspective changes to make up a bridge. But before we get into that, this is also the first time that the booming voice that has been talking to you, that you're trying to figure out who that is, makes a joke at you, where he says, "Oh, damn, you're actually beasting this game a little bit.
I know,
I didn't think you were gonna be alive."
It's so funny. It kind of breaks that character with you, and this voice of darkness that's been harassing you this whole time.
Yeah, the whole time
is like, all right, listen, I'm going to be real with you. I was just trying to like drive your hatred to like help you complete these quests, but like you're kind of sick at this. So I'm just going to lay back. And it's like, what is happening right now? Like, what's going on?
It's so
you're kind
of
sick, dude.
But you go through this final area, and before you go, this is the last area where you can collect these lorestones. And when you do, if you collect all of them, which I did because I was like super pilled on collecting them, you get an extra cutscene. And this cutscene is when you enter like the final hallway to actually get to Hela. Druth appears, and Druth kind of talks to you. And he confesses that he's basically a piece of shit and a coward, is how he describes himself as, because he was captured by the Northmen, and instead of like keeping quiet and not snitching, he kind of succumbs to the torture, and he starts snitching and telling the Northmen where all the villages in Orkney, which is where you're from, are. And by doing so, you can kind of you don't have to blame it on Druth, but you can kind of blame it a little bit on Druth that like Dillion's village got ransacked, and obviously that's why he died, and like other villages did too. Now you can partly blame it on him, because then he says something that I'm going to read. He says that someone else from Senua's village who was wearing a black cloak also did the same thing that he had been doing, which is giving information to the Northmen about where the villages were to protect their own people, is how Druth describes it. But he says, I had a terrible fate because of it, and this person who did it didn't. So he was also a little bit like, kind of like hurt by that. And then he drops a really good quote after he says that. He says, it's not the gods that cause our suffering, but those closest to us. And so then you start putting two together. Wait.
Who do we know that's in a black cloak?
Who do we know that's in a black cloak who hates us and is up to no good always? My father! My papa!
It's Zimbel, bro.
It's Zimbel, so you can kind of interpret it in two ways. It's not really like clear cut who sent the Northmen to Dillion's village. You can say maybe Druth, maybe Zimbel. They don't really say it, but it's either of them / maybe both of them. And you're like,
I think it's pretty heavily implied it's her father.
I think so. But
it's also worth noting that little tidbit of information, that is the reward you get for collecting all of the lore stones. You don't get that unless you've collected all of the lore stones.
Yeah.
So you got that. I did not. I didn't. I think I missed a few lore stones along the way, and I just didn't get it.
It makes you angry. It makes you super angry. But also like why I think it's like semi-ambiguous is because you learn that you meet Druth while Senua had distanced herself from Dillion's village because there was a plague in the village, and obviously because of her mental health, she like blames it on herself, and she says, I need to go beat this darkness and I need to leave, and maybe the cause of this plague is me. I don't know. They tell me I'm cursed. Let me go and try to figure it out by myself. And in that journey where she's like out, you meet Druth. And so I'm thinking, well, if Druth was around that village, maybe that was like the last village that he gave the Northmen as information before he like fled and was able to like leave. Yeah. So I don't know.
See that.
It probably is Zimbel, but I just think that it's not like 100% Zimbel. It could be Druth too, but regardless, both of them have hurt Senua deeply, obviously. Druth being like the comedic relief and like one of your favorite characters. Well, one of the two characters that obviously you like him, and now you're thinking, this guy sucks. You go through the gate, you get that cutscene, and then you see this there's this hallway that looks completely different in terms of architecture than everything else that you've seen, and there's this big mirror in front of it, and you get this really intense kind of scene where all of the voices, the Furies in Senua's head, are like super, super scared about what Senua's about to do. And they're telling her, no, don't do it, don't go in there. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? Your voice is spinning and you're hearing all these voices so much. And then Senua approaches the mirror, and then she enters the mirror. Oh, actually, before she does that, a being pops out of the mirror first. She's like yelling at the mirror, and it's like, Senua's talking to herself, but it's like a different, she's saying different things than what she's actually saying. The mirror isn't really mirroring. A being pops out of the mirror, and then Senua goes into the mirror, and this new being, this new Senua, is now cleansed from the voices in her head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a really interesting kind of sequence, because the voices have been with us this whole time. They've been giving us their opinion on everything that's happening and telling us what to do. And like you said, now they're scared, because I think Senua has kind of accepted that she might not live through this encounter. She kind of expects not to survive this at this point in the game. And so I think the Furies are scared for that reason. They know that if Senua dies, they die with her. So
of course,
they're kind of scared and trying to, like you said, prevent her from going in kind of at all costs. So that was a good, definitely a good scene. But eventually, you go through the portal, and upon going through the portal, you get one final flashback.
Ooh,
And
ooh,
this
ooh.
flashback is from the perspective of Senua as a child, I think. So she's
Mhm.
very young. She maybe doesn't understand what's happening. But in the flashback, you can see that it's the same scene we've seen before with Senua's mother burning on a pyre, but this time she's surrounded by people, and one of those people is Zinbel. And it's heavily implied and kind of directly stated by Zinbel himself that he was the architect of this. He
Yeah.
basically went around the village, told everyone that the mother is cursed, she has been inflicted with this darkness. He riles up the villagers and they burn her at the stake. So she did not commit suicide
No.
like he had told Senua, and like Senua, because she probably, blacked out this experience or just blocked it out in her mind, like she had believed, she was essentially killed by her father and by the village. So a very big revelation, obviously, and also one that inspires just this rage inside of Senua. She
Mhm.
is on a warpath from this point. And after you get this cutscene, you enter this like very ethereal looking world of
Mhm.
this like series of platforms. The sky is like cloudy and gray, and everything is like very kind of amorphous. But at the end of this series of platforms is Hela, the goddess Hela, and that's who we're here to see. So we are going after Hela.
We
So
want to
you're
get her.
running towards her. You're running towards her. The game basically just starts throwing waves of enemies at you as it's kind of been doing for the second half of the
You
game.
fight like bosses that you fought before.
Yeah.
They're all like different. Every single enemy that you've defeated, they are appearing and you're fighting them. And you kind of keep having to go through waves of enemies. And as you go through a wave of enemy, you can go to the next platform and you kind of
Hmm.
keep going until you finally reach Hela. And when you do, you get hundreds and hundreds of enemies. I mean, so
Yeah.
many that you try your hardest to keep alive and you can't. Eventually, it doesn't matter how long it takes, but eventually you will die to them.
Yeah.
And you think, oh God, we didn't do it.
Yeah, we failed. We failed in our quest, Ben. It seems like all hope is kind of lost in this moment. We get a cutscene where, I was expecting to respawn. I'm
Me
sure
too.
you
Yeah,
were as
I thought,
well.
oh, okay, let's try it again.
But that's not what happens. You get a cutscene. Senua is laying on the ground. She is kind of uh, groveling, basically.
Yeah.
Hela approaches her, and Hela's been like a giant this whole time, but she kind of scales down here to be roughly Senua's size. And she kind of approaches Senua and doesn't say a word.
Mm-mm.
Senua gets on
It-
her knees pretty
yeah.
much, and she kind of goes back and forth between begging. She's begging for Dillian's life. She's saying, you can have my soul. I'll be your warrior at Ragnarok. I'll be your slave warrior if you let Dillian go. She's begging. And then she kind of goes to like rage and like screaming at Hela and being so angry at Hela. So there's all these different like waves of emotions that Senua is going through. But eventually, Hela just approaches her and picks her up and just silently stabs her with Senua's own sword.
Yeah.
Senua falls to the ground, slowly dying, and we get a really touching, I'd say, kind of last cutscene here with Dillian.
Yeah. So Hela, basically, after she kind of tosses Senua out, she picks up Dillian, the head of Dillian, and she slowly walks towards the ledge of this platform that you're in. And you're looking at it like very close up to Hela's face, and they do that a lot. They do
Mm-hmm.
that a lot. Senua looks at the camera a ton. She talks to you as if you're one of the Furies, as if you're one of the people in her head. And she tells you a lot of the times you are the one who caused this, and she's looking directly at you. And so you're kind of in that perspective again. You walk, you kneel down, and you toss Dillian off the platform. and you say something like, you're free or you're rest now or whatever, the camera pans to Dillian, and as it pans back, it's not Hella who was doing that, but it's Senua. And
Right.
Hella is the one that was quote unquote tossed and is laying on the ground. Then something kind of bizarre happens that I haven't really seen in a lot of video games. There's this like kind of poppy song that starts kind of playing in the background, like in drums, like, just like toom 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 toom. And then then the camera kind of flies as if it's like, this like movie scene. Senua gets up, turns around to the camera and tells it basically like, follow me, I have another story to tell. And I'm like, what? And then she walks away, and then the credits roll, and I'm like, dude, what did I just see? What did I just experience? I immediately, when that happened, I was like, I have not heard that song or this like kind of like a theme of genre of music at all in the last 10 hours of playing this game. It's one of the most bizarre endings, I think.
It is one of the weirdest endings to a game that I can imagine. And I don't mean like the story ending, because I think that the actual ending of the game itself of kind of realizing that Hella is kind of a version of Senua that is trying to let Dillian go. And the Senua we're playing is like not accepting that and is trying to defeat that portion of herself that wants to let him go. I think that ending itself is really good and is like really, really effectively told. And then to end it with this totally jarring, pop song, like you said, like it goes against the whole atmosphere of the game that's been created. It feels like they're just directly plugging a sequel pretty much. They're telling you themselves. We're going to make another game. Come play the other game. And I have to say, this is really funny. So right after I played it, I was sitting there trying to process what just happened. Like, what are they doing? And so I went on, I typed in like, Senua's Sacrifice ending just to see like what other people are saying about it. And I found a Reddit thread from when it released, like in 2017. And, the OP is saying like basically what I'm thinking, which is like, this was really weird. Like, did they just plug a sequel at the end of this game? Like it just felt so thematically off compared to the rest of the game. And everyone in the comments was saying like, what are you talking about, man? There's never going to be a sequel to this game. Like, what would they even do? It's not possible for there to be a sequel.
Oh my god.
Cut to last year when, of course, we get Senua's Saga, the sequel. So,
but man, to me, a sequel makes sense. And we have a question about this, so I'm not going to go into it. A sequel makes sense, but you don't do that. I mean, I guess you can, and you did, but it's just so odd, and it takes away from the ending of the game. Like, it was like a really kind of strong ending in terms of the story that they were trying to tell, but they kind of like literally cut it away by performing this bizarre shenanigan. But that's the end of Senua's Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, and we're going to talk so much more about the game, our thoughts about the story, our thoughts about whether everything that we experienced happened or didn't happen. Did it half happen? What exactly are we thinking about this? And we're going to answer all the questions that you guys have sent to us on the Discord. That's the best way to interact with us. That's the best way to interact with Video Game Book Club. So if you're not part of it, you should join now. We'll be back in like 2 seconds. Welcome to part 2 of Video Game Book Club, where we answer the questions that you have sent to us on our Discord. The best way, again, to join Video Game Book Club is through our Discord, and we have the link to it basically everywhere. So you can find it on our YouTube, Spotify, and everywhere else. What social media? I don't know. Ben, because the community chose the game, I'm going to start with the first question. So the first question starts from is from Dilly Pig, and they ask, is there a quote slash conversation that stood out to you while playing as being meaningful beyond Senua's story?
Yeah, so for me, it was the quote from Dillian at the very end of the game, kind of after Senua has been stabbed by Hela.
Ooh.
She's laying on the ground. There's a cool moment where Senua is laying on the ground and like a version of Dillian kind of is superimposed over the ground, so it seems like they're kind of facing each other. And Dillian kind of goes into this long speech, and he starts it by saying, I learned the hard way to not be afraid of death, Senua, because a life without loss is one without love. Turn your back on death, and you only see the shadow that it casts. I like took a mental note of that as I was playing, just because I thought it was really profound, and it's something that I agree with to a really large extent, because I feel like it's really ingrained in us, this like fear of death, right?
Yeah.
It's ingrained in our society, this fear of death. But it's my personal belief that you have to like live your life in spite of that, and to
Of course.
and I think what he says about, if you live your life in fear of death, or if you turn your back on it, you only see the shadow it casts, and you're only, you're going to be basically surrounded by the effects that it has on you. So yeah, that was it for me. I thought that was a great quote, definitely a banger of a quote to kind of end the game on.
It's a banger of a quote. I really like that one, and I feel it's super hard, especially the first part, a life without loss is a life without love, or something.
Yes.
It's obviously completely true. I like it. Let's see. I like two, so I'm sorry, but I brought two.
That's okay.
The first one is from Senua, and she says, do not mourn the waves, the leaves, and the clouds, because even in darkness, the wonder and the beauty of the world never leaves. It's always there, waiting to be seen again. And it kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with what Ben was saying, that you can have like really, really terrible moments, and you start feeling that the world is full of, again, shadows, and it's in darkness and everything, and you're mourning being able to see it again. But it's there for you. It's there for you when you're ready to see it again. It's there for you when you're better and you can see it again. And she gets better, and the world is waiting for her now. And so that's, I don't know, I really like that one. And then the other one is from a narrator, and I think it's from the mom, and it's before you fight Hela the first time, or you don't really fight her, but you encounter Hela the first time. And it says, maybe that's why people feared seeing the world through her eyes. Because if you believe that Senua's reality is twisted, you must accept that yours might be too. And I really like the part that says you must accept, because it feels so objective. Like if you think someone else's version of reality is wrong, then you have to accept that yours is too. Because if you believe that we're all experiencing the same reality, then the reality is fine. But if you believe that everyone is experiencing a different reality, then yours might be the effed up one too,
Yeah,
so
and
that one's really
good. That goes into another quote that I didn't write down, but I'm just kind of remembering as you're talking about that, where they say, the narrator in like a really interesting moment asks if you've ever died before, and says like, it's not a joke. I'm not asking this as a joke. Like, have you died before? And kind of goes on to explain that when your sense of identity is shattered, that you essentially cease to exist. It's essentially a death, like when you have like an ego death, like we were talking about.
And that happens to Druth. When
Yeah.
Druth, his life before being captured, he wasn't Druth. That was not his name. Druth is a nickname that means fool or liar or stupid or something like that. He had an identity, and he had a life, and he had a name, and then he became Druth when that identity died, and he became this slave basically of the Northmen. So
yeah, definitely.
Really good.
All right, I will ask you Dilly Pig's second question.
Well, so many.
And this is a big one. So he asks, first of all, how do you think the game handled the mental health and psychosis aspect? And going with that, how much of the story do you think actually happened, versus how much do you think was just in Senua's head?
Ooh, I love the second part of the question so much. I'm going to start with the first one, obviously the first half. How How do I think the game handled mental health? I'm gonna say it didn't handle mental health in general. It talked and you experienced psychosis as maybe as best as they want you to experience it, but they don't quote unquote handle mental health. Like you never talk about mental health aside from psychosis, in my opinion. I think that they made us experience psychosis in a really, really strong way. And if you watch the feature film kind of documentary that you unlock when you beat the game, or it's free on YouTube it's on YouTube if you want to watch it, they go at length to explain every single basically decision that they made in how they want you to experience what a person that has psychosis experiences on a day to day. They researched obviously a lot. They had different professors in England, from psychology professors or maybe psychiatric professors, explained to them what psychosis was, the difference between psychosis and schizophrenia, for example. They spoke to people who aren't named or featured in the film about their experiences, because these two people do hear voices in their day-to-day life, and they also get different quotes from the lived experience of people that actually have psychosis and what that experience feels like. After watching that film and thinking about all the different things that you experience while playing the game, wow. And that's the only word I have. Wow. That's incredible. I didn't realize how kind of precise everything that they wanted you to experience was. The kind of a gate melting a little bit and looking kind of dizzy and nauseating was because that's how some people experience their psychosis. And obviously the Furies talking to you, that spatial awareness that you kind of don't have because all these voices that you hear are everywhere. The delusions that Senua have are delusions that people with psychosis experience. And that was handled really, really well. But that's why, like, or not handled, but experienced really well. I think handle is my problem with this question, because it's not like in I don't know, maybe a different game like Spiritfarer, where you like talk about really difficult topics in like some kind of careful way where they want to wrap it around in like a delicate form and talk about it. This is more like not delicate at all. There's no delicacy here. Yeah. It's all intense. So but I think they portrayed it really, really well.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I watched the same thing as you, and they talk about a part where after they had finished the game and they were about to release it, they brought back in like all of the experts and all of the people they consulted to make it, and had them essentially watch a playthrough of the game. And afterwards, they interviewed them, and all of them were like, "Wow, like incredible! You portrayed it so well. Like everything was done so well. Like it's incredible." So, who am I to disagree with the experts? If they think it's good, I'm sure it's good. So I think the only answer to that part of the question is, they handled and presented it really well, for sure.
Okay, now for the second part of the question, what did actually happen? Did everything actually happen? So the story, the prologue of the story obviously happened, the mom being killed by the dad, Senua being imprisoned by her father, Dillian coming to the village, her and Dillian having this like love, her escaping because she wants to be with him, a plague hitting Dillian's village, her leaving the village because she was afraid that she was the cause of the plague, because she doesn't really understand this darkness or curse that her father has like told her that she has over and over and over and over and over again in her life. And then her coming back and seeing the village destroyed. Boom. That's the prologue, basically, chronologically. And then the game starts. Mm-hmm. Does Hela defeat gods? No. I mean, does Senua defeat gods? No. Does she go to the underworld? No. I don't think that anything that you as the player experience in the game actually happened. I don't think that you get Odin's sword and you kill the beast underneath in Helheim that is guarding the first kind of gate to Helheim. I think Senua, in her kind of psychosis, is walking around the Orkney and all the villages being burnt, and she's coming to terms with like the death of Dillion and like the burning of the village while fighting actual Northmen, Nordic people that are in the village. So I think that's true. She's like stumbling from village to
Yeah.
village and she's fighting all these people that want her dead. But like, that's why they look very human. That's why those enemies look human, but everything else looks super distorted and not real. Like the beasts and everything. So no, nothing like that you experience really happens. It's all just like Senua kind of go. It's all in her head, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, yeah, you're totally right. I think the only way my interpretation differs is that I do think Senua like set out and went to like the Northmen's territory. Like I think she's
For
not
sure.
in her homeland to me.
Oh, okay.
Like I think she is in some Nordic region. I don't know where. Um,
Mm.
but I think, yeah, like you said, I think the events of the game as we experience them and as Senua experienced them maybe weren't how other people in the world experience them. I think you're right. I think there's probably some random Northmen in these encampments that
Yeah.
Senua is kind of tearing through. I think the beast was probably like a bear like that
Sure.
she came across. I think she was fighting a bear in that instance. So I think that's real, or maybe a wolf. I don't know.
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
it would be a
something like
large
that.
wolf.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's all kind of her interpretation because we see as we go, and maybe it's distorted, but like she's picking up like scars and battle wounds. She's getting injured, she's hurting, like things are happening. She is going through an actual series of events. It's just the lens that they're being viewed through is
Yeah.
distorted.
She
So
hurts herself too with the sword, and then she has a scar
yes,
throughout the rest of the game. And even in the
yeah,
end, when she's quote unquote like kind of overcome or accepted, one, Dillion's death, and two, her mental health, her psychosis, really. But
yeah,
yeah, I really good point. The thing why I thought she was still like around in Orkney is because um I guess it's okay when where the sword is, that the Odin sword is in
hmm
this tree, and she has this flashback with the same tree, and her and Dillion are there, kind of like the first time that they meet.
yeah,
Obviously that has to be in their village, not in the Nordic
yeah. That's a good
territory,
point.
but also like it could have just been a tree and it just looks like the one maybe that reminded her. So I don't know,
Sure,
because that's
sure.
why I thought she hadn't moved away, and all the corpses that she keeps seeing, all the villages like ransacked and all those probably are real. She's going to a village
hmm
that the Nordic people have ransacked and stuff, so that's why I
Yeah,
thought
true,
it was
true,
it was by her.
true.
But it could be, it doesn't really matter where it is. She's it just, she sees Northmen, she's killing them, and then going through the thing, but
Right.
she didn't go to Helheim or anything. Also, I do find it hilarious, not hilarious, kind of spooky that Senua cut off Dillion's head and
Yeah,
it wrapped it in like cloth, and is actually throughout the game like holding his head. Like it's not a
yeah.
head that
That's
talks.
real.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that
thing is
is
real.
real.
It's not a head that talks to her. It's just a head that she just freaking is carrying. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, definitely.
Dilly Pig has hit us with another question. How do you feel about the decision to have no HUD, tutorial, or generally text on the screen, with the only words being the rot explanation, credits, and subtitles? Did you think the Furies were enough, or would you have preferred explanations of things like the focus, parrying, and combos?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, totally agree. I think we touched on this a little earlier, but my initial experience with them was one of slight frustration, but upon looking back on the game, it makes sense. And I think it goes back to what I was saying about, purposefully not giving you instructions on how to cross like a ledge or how to dodge in combat or parry or anything like that. The game wants you to be afraid of it. The game wants you to be constantly worried about this rot decision and the rot that's in the game. You don't want your, progress being erased, right? So they want you to die in a few ways and to get frustrated. They want you to get frustrated in some ways because I think it amplifies that feeling of anxiety. So do I think there could have been a little more guidance? Yes. But they also Dilly mentions the Furies in the game, and they do act as a tutorial in some
Yeah.
ways. Like for example, when you're in combat and an enemy goes into like an illusory state that you can't hit, they start yelling at you like, focus, focus, you need to
Focus.
focus, what are you doing,
Focus now.
focus. And I like, it's so funny because in the heat of combat you're not really hearing that, like you hear them yelling focus, but I'm just like, I am focused, like I'm trying here. But no, they're literally telling you hit the focus button, because when you hit that focus button you'll be able to kill the enemies. So yeah, they do provide like a little bit of, the chorus of the Furies does kind of toss you some pointers. And like in, when you're towards the end of the game and there's so many enemies in combat, it's likely that they're kind of surrounding you at different points. And so that, you'll be fighting one enemy and all of a sudden one of the Furies will pipe up and go, behind you, watch out. And right as they say that, you need to dodge because you're about to get hit from behind if you don't. So it is kind of clever the way that they use Furies in kind of those instances to give you little tips and to kind of help you out a little bit. But yeah, so overall, I think I like that decision of like the no HUD. I think it's really immersive, and the no tutorial, it's really immersive. It serves the goals of the game, which is kind of to put you in Senua's shoes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and so overall, I think I like it.
I completely agree. That's exactly what I was going to say. You are in Senua's shoes, and Senua experiences the world in such a foreign way, in such a raw way, in her own like reality. And so we are in that reality, and she doesn't have any help, and she doesn't have any tutorial buttons or HUD or anything. So you are experiencing it kind of how she does, in a foreign way. Like, oh, can I go there? Can I not go there? Is that an actual ledge that I can climb? Is it not? Like, I don't know. She doesn't know either, Also, the Furies, they're so good. The one thing that is frustrating is that sometimes the subtitles would work when the Furies were talking, and sometimes it wouldn't. So sometimes
there's just so many of them. There's so many voices that, like, they show what one of the Furies is saying, but there's 4 other talking. So it's it's disorienting. But yeah,
I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, Dilly has kind of a follow-up question to that, which is like regarding the permadeath. It's pretty much a bluff by the developers.
Right.
Like I didn't really look into it. I don't know if it's actually possible to have your file deleted. I assume
think so.
it is you don't think so?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Well,
but
that's
it's basically a bluff.
Read the next sentence.
Yeah, so the developers intentionally mislead you into thinking it can kind of install a sense of fear in you as a player to match Senua's fear. Yeah, kind of like we just touched on. But does knowing this post-game impact your experience with the game? What do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, I think they used it perfectly. I kind of like that developers are playing with you a little bit, and I actually wish that they were playing with me a little bit more, because part of my frustration with this game is that the game isn't the most engaging. Like, it's really not engaging. The only thing that's engaging is that you experience it. Speaking of the no HUD and anything, it's a very cinematic experience, but that's kind of it, in my opinion. Like, it's just a cinematic experience. The actual gameplay of it is like fine, maybe sometimes less than fine. So I think that, like, using those playful things by instilling like anxiety and stuff is good. I like it, and I wish they would have done more things like that.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that, because I agree, is just that I think I kind of picked up a little bit on the whole bluff aspect of it, because there was like a specific point in the game where I think it was right after like the river of blood and corpses, where after you get the sword, where I, like I said, I died during that combat encounter, and I had died maybe once or twice before that as well. So the rot was like kind of, getting towards my shoulder, pretty much. And then I got to a particular point in the game, and suddenly it was just like back down to my hand. And it looked like it had totally reset. And I was like, okay, is it like messing with me a little bit here? Yeah. Like, is it kind of playing with the level of the rot? So I think I like picked up on it, the fact that it wasn't like, the most consistent thing kind of because of that.
Are we sure that you were experiencing reality well? Did you actually see the rod in the shoulder, or are you just fibbing right now?
I can't tell you. All I can tell you is my lived, just like Senua, all I've got is my lived experience.
All he's got is his lived experience. Dilly Pig has another question. Dillian fits my favorite character trope, that being the dead but important story influence. Wait. That being the dead, but he's also the important story influence. Do you have a character trope you love seeing in games?
Yeah, I'll say one that I like a lot is having like the big final boss or just like a really strong enemy at the very beginning of the game. Like I'm thinking of like Sekiro in particular, or even like Dark Souls, where the Abyss Demon, or you fight in Sekiro, one of the first things you do is you fight Genichiro, who is going to be one of the final bosses in the game, and he absolutely works you. Like, it's possible to beat him if you're like absolutely cracked, but when you're first playing the game, you're going to be in a state where you don't really know what's happening. So Genichiro totally waxes you, but then you experience that, but then the rest of the game is kind of building up your strength and building your power to now, when you confront him again, you're more powerful and you can take him on this time.
And he still waxes you.
Nah, bro. Nah, I'm waxing him. He's toast. But yeah, that's one I like, is just like having something at the beginning that like establishes the power level, and then being able to work your way back up to the point where you can kind of compete, I guess.
One of my favorite character tropes is the punching bag character, literally. The NPC that you can practice like all of your moves on. For example, Skelly from Hades, he calls you Boyo, and it's just so funny, and I just love messing him up, and he likes it. He's like, yeah, do it again, Or like I've been like playing Chrono Trigger, Gato from Chrono Trigger. He like teaches you how to do magic, and also you can like absolutely wreck him if you want. Mr. Sandbag from Kirby, and he also appears in Super Smash, and then Mokuhin from Tekken.
There's one of these in Sekiro as well.
No?
There's like a character that constantly comes back to life and that you can kill. So.
Yeah, there's a fun. I need to play Sekiro, Ben. You need to
Dude.
You need to make me play it.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay, I will move on now. So we've got a question from Inferno Disco.
Sure.
And she writes, in Video Game Book Club, we have played several games that revolve around grief and loss. This is very true. In particular, that we're kind of on a run.
We really are
right now.
It's a sad summer.
She says, something nearly everyone goes through at some point in their life, right?
Yep.
Each game tells kind of a different story as it relates to those themes. What did you personally take away from Hellblade that is unique to it compared to those other Video Game Book Club games? Specifically, the ones we played recently are Clair Obscur and Spiritfarer. Kind of have directly addressed those topics as well. So
I think Spiritfarer and to an extent Expedition 33 are a lot more like to the point with it. I think Hellblade, like the whole journey is about grief, but the whole journey really is about psychosis. Like in my view, like I feel like I didn't really like. I don't want to say this sounds bad, but it's what I feel. I didn't really like learn anything from from like grief and loss in Hellblade, but I did write down the quote that you had said, that you said that was your favorite quote, that you don't experience loss if you don't experience love. And I think that's like completely true as someone who has experienced loss a few times, and really, really difficult and hurtful ones. The one thing that always keeps me going is that I have to keep loving as much as I can, as the maximum amount of love that I can give out. And I feel like that is shown in my personality a lot. Like I'm not afraid of being very open. I'm not afraid of having a lot of relationships, friendships, and just meeting people, talking to people, because that's all we have. And once we die, then you don't have it anymore. And don't be afraid of it. Like you have to kind of nurture and kind of keep growing those relationships without fear that they're going to be gone, because they will be gone one way or another. They will be gone, and it's better to enjoy it in the moment than regret that you didn't do X or Y or Z while that person was, one, either alive, or two, like around you, so yeah.
Yeah, I'd say for me, the thing that differentiates Senua's Sacrifice is there's like the very upfront theme of grieving with Dillian in terms of the story of Dillian. We know he's died. We know Senua's going through this whole saga trying to get him back or save his soul, pretty much. So that's very in your face, but there's another source of grief and another source of trauma that the game doesn't tell you about pretty much until the very end. And I think once you know that, the whole, the fact of her mother being killed by her father and learning along the way all the parts of, the abuse she suffered at the hands of her father, all of that informs so much of Senua's suffering and her mental state, her being, pretty much. So that kind of background thing, and it's almost like, a repressed memories that she has of like seeing her mother. She's repressing that. She's repressing her childhood. But all of those things have such a significant impact on her as she's going. And you don't even know it. You don't even know how much that's impacting her kind of until the end of the game. So yeah. I thought it was really unique in that way, how they had kind of both kind of in your face, like this story of grief and trauma and kind of healing, but also kind of another one in the background as well. So that was unique for me.
Thank you, Inferno Disco, for the question. We have a question from Joe, and Joe asks, rather than ask what was Senua's Sacrifice trying to do, I would ask, what was Senua's Sacrifice trying to be? And was it at all successful in that mission?
Yeah, so I think the easy answer here would be to say that this is a game that's trying to depict mental illness and psychosis in as pure a form as possible. I'm going to disagree with that. I think what Senua's Sacrifice is trying to be, and this is informed by watching the kind of feature film that the developers put together after I beat the game. They describe Senua's Sacrifice as a hero's journey. They say they set out to make a classic hero's journey of, a hero that sets out, is going through all this hardship, all this enduring, all of these things, and, finally conquers in the end. And they wanted, there to be a, kind of psychosis element to that. And I think it was their duty to then represent it as accurately as possible. They if you're going to depict something as sensitive as mental illness or psychosis, it's your duty to do as good a job as possible. So you have to consult the experts. You have to make it as accurate a portrayal as possible. But at its core, I think Senua's Sacrifice is just trying to be a hero's journey about a character that kind of conquers hardship, pretty much. And to that end, I think it's mostly successful. I think we talked about some kind of weirdness with the end, but I think it wraps up the narrative pretty well. And I think Senua does succeed in the end of kind of moving on. And she does not succeed in, she's not magically cured of her mental illness. No. The game kind of makes sure to let you know that. The game, when she says follow, at the end of the game, when she's like plugging the sequel, she says, follow us, not follow me, follow us. So yeah, this is not a game about conquering mental illness. It's a game about a hero's journey that happens to involve mental illness.
Yeah, the Furies also start talking again. You didn't hear them for a little bit, but they're back. So I kind of half agree with you. I think Senua's Sacrifice is trying to be unique. It's trying to be a hipster game, kind of. This developer, like you said, they were just trying to make a hero's journey, an RPG, but they were like, how can we be different? How can we be unique? How can we be hipster? Why would people play our game? Can we make a hero's journey that is different? And then when I agree with you is that once they found what maybe uniqueness they wanted to tackle, which is psychosis, then they went all in and they put all of their chips on that kind of a bet. But yeah, I mean, you can tell the game just was trying to be. They were just trying to be different. They were just trying to be hipster. And did they succeed in that? Yeah, definitely. This is a very like unique
Super
experience. One that in some ways was done really, 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 really well, and in other ways wasn't. So yeah, I think so. You got the last question?
Yeah, so the last question is from Glass Shark, and he says the sequel to Hellblade, which, you know, in the year 2025 we have the privilege of knowing exists. The sequel to Hellblade has been reviewed harshly for being weak. Do you feel the game stands on its own merits to the point where it didn't need one, or do you feel there was more story to tell? And I'm actually going to add an addendum to the end of this question, which is, do you feel compelled to play the sequel?
Okay.
That's in addition to the rest of Glass Shark's questions.
I love this question because now I can actually talk about how I feel about the game, you know, because we made it all the way this far.
Yeah.
Why would I think that a sequel to Hellblade would be good if the game feels terrible? Like, I didn't have the puzzles suck, you know, like the puzzles are not, like I said, I think that the core of it was probably smart, but they did not capitalize on their own ingenuity at all, in my opinion. Like, the puzzles felt super flat and they felt super repetitive. The combat felt like super flat and super repetitive. Again, the only thing that they had going for them is the uniqueness of like the psychosis aspect of the game, and then the cool story that they're trying to tell with Dillian and Helheim and everything. But now that that has happened, obviously the sequel is going to be, well, let's go mess up some Northmen. And then I looked it up, and that's exactly what the sequel is. But why would I want to play an action adventure game when the first game that they gave me is not an action adventure game? It's like terrible at doing that. And so then I saw all the reviews and it's like, yeah, the combat is like super dull and like the puzzles are super dull. It's like, yeah, they showed us that. They showed us that they don't really know how to do a puzzle game. They don't really know how to do an action adventure game. They only know how to portray psychosis and how to be a really, really solid cinematic experience, but not a really, really solid game. You know? So I really like this question, and I'm sorry that I exploded at this point, but I've been holding it in the whole time. I don't think it needed a sequel, and am I going to play the sequel? No, I'm not going to play the sequel.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, to me, when you play a game like this, and you know it's the first game that's been put out by the studio, you know it's trying to do something super unique with the audio and the psychosis and the visuals and everything, and the story is told pretty well. The combat and the actual gameplay, the puzzling, is not super strong. To me, when I leave a game like this with all of that context of the development studio, I'm thinking to myself, okay, that was pretty cool, but I'm interested to see how they, improve upon this kind of where are they going to go next? Because this is like a decent baseline, but how are you going to push it to that next level? And so when I look up the reviews, because of course I looked up the reviews for Senua Saga, the sequel, and the reviews pretty much just say, yeah, the first game had some gameplay, this one kind of has less. The puzzles in the first game were pretty surface level, and they're not really any more deep in this game. So it's like you had the opportunity and you had the feedback from the first game to lock in and make it, if you want to make a sequel, which
they did.
With the benefit of hindsight, it seems like they did, even though our friends on the Reddit thread were like, what? They would never make a sequel. It seems like you got all the feedback you needed to really improve upon this and to make it a great game, and that just kind of didn't really happen. So is it disappointing? Sure. And do I feel like I'm gonna, play the next game? Probably not.
I feel like now that you're talking about this Reddit thread, they're probably like, it was an R whoosh, bro. I think they probably were just all being extremely sarcastic, because there's no way that you would be that, like, unobservant, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ben, did you have a favorite moment in the game? Did you have a favorite area or something?
My favorite moment, I think, is the boss fight with the beasts. Like I said, like I think it was just the coolest, and it's probably because it's like the best gameplay in
Yeah.
the game. It combines so many different gameplay elements that it feels really good. So yeah, that was my favorite moment, and my favorite area. I don't know. I think yeah, probably like the halls and the darkness kind of beast area as well. I think that was like the strongest part of the game for me, probably as a whole.
I think I like the that blindness shard trial was probably the
Yeah.
my favorite area. I wish they would have done a little bit more of that. And my favorite moment, I think seeing Hela drop the head and then panning it back to being Senua was pretty good. So I like that.
For sure.
If you don't have any more questions, then I think we can go into our rating. And also, before we do that, I just wanted to thank everyone, of course, in the Video Game Book Club community for submitting
Yeah.
your questions.
Thank you to the
guys are
community
awesome.
because
Yeah.
this was the community voted game. We put up a poll in the Discord. We had a bunch of games listed, and this is the one that won. So we put it up to the community, and this is what they came back with. So thank you everyone
And the
for your
range,
participation and for picking it.
yeah, and to help us with the range of games that we play, so that we're not stuck playing the same kind of type of games. We're going out of our comfort zone and playing different unique games. As we've said, this is a very unique game, so thank you so much for helping us and helping yourselves, hopefully, to also expand your horizons in terms of gaming. We really appreciate it. Ben, why don't you give me your final review?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of summarized it just now pretty much. Like
True.
I this to me feels like a really good like technical test. Like it feels like the development studio showing what they can do with the audio, with the, representation of psychosis, with all of the everything like that, with the gameplay itself being pretty bare. So it feels like to me like a good jumping off point, and that's kind of the way I'm going to judge it. So for me, that would be like a B minus, maybe a B. I feel like B is probably where I'm at with the game. Like I really enjoyed the overall story itself. I think it was told really well, and I think there was always little twists and turns in the narrative that were kind of continuously introduced. But yeah, my overall experience with the puzzling and the combat and stuff like that, I just felt kind of wasn't the best. So I enjoyed the game. Like I think I'll look back on it as a game I enjoyed, but just not one that really blew me away, I guess.
I really think that the best aspect of the game is obviously the audio design. You can't, that's 10 out of 10, obviously. But the
Yeah.
cinematics, like this is a very, like the director of the game, if you had told me that he studied film, I would be like, yeah, like it feels great. The cinematics look really good. And not just like, oh, did it look pretty? No, like the way that the camera pans, the way that the actors acted out all the scenes that they did. Like we said, Senua is captured from a real person doing all of her movements.
And I just want to say this is a huge benefit to them. The actor that did the motion capture for Senua was just a random person that worked for them. She
Yeah.
was like an editor on their team, basically, and she just stepped in and did it. And she did an unbelievable job. So just
incredible
credit,
job.
credit
Super.
where it's due.
100%. And then every other character that you meet, you don't meet them in like a game form. You meet them as the real person, a real actor portraying the character that they're trying to be. And so the director having to direct them and put all of that together is really good. So kudos to the cinematography, which is kind of funny to talk about that in a game, but it really did feel like a movie at times, and that's a very
Yeah.
unique thing, and I really liked it. The thing is, besides those two things, I didn't really like anything else. Like I said, I felt the puzzles were repetitive and unimaginative. Like if you want to make a puzzle adventure game and you have good ideas, like this person having psychosis and reality not being real, or like her perceived reality not exactly being like the objective reality, play with that more. Give me so much more than just finding runes, like 3 different runes in an area that is way too big for a character that walks way too slowly. Like I feel like the moment to moment between the cinematics were just boring. Like I was just waiting to get to the next scene, basically. I just was waiting to get to the next scene so I would understand the story a little bit better, that I did think was solid. But like between those scenes, nothing. Like the scenes, what, amounted to 2 hours of the game, maybe? And then the gameplay that you actually play amounts to what, maybe 7 hours of the game, maybe a little bit less. So those 7 hours of like not great gameplay far outweigh to me the cinematics and the audio design of the 2 hours that were pretty solid. So in general, also I just felt like the game felt clunky. Not just the character's weight, but just in general the way that you experience the world was just like slightly clunky. And again, the 2017 is not that far ago. There's some games from 2001 that feel amazing. So it's just kind of a testament to, again, yeah, maybe it's just their first game and they couldn't capture it that well, but they were.
But then the second one's not.
Yeah,
that good
that's true.
either,
They were just
so.
focusing on the psychosis part of it and not like it's a video game at the end of the day. So to me, this is a C-.
Ooh, dang!
Yeah.
that. I think that's the lowest grade that's been given on this show.
No, we gave Plucky Squire like a D or an F.
Oh, did we?
Oh yeah.
Dang.
I think we gave it an F.
No way.
For
No
sure,
chance.
bro. If not, we have to revisit.
We'll
I mean,
go
a C-
up.
is like a 7, right? 77.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. There you go. Stamp it.
Stamp it. C-, and what did you say? B?
Yeah, I said like B. So we'll
Okay.
meet in the middle at C+. How about that?
See, I think this is
No.
one of those where we're gonna have different.
You don't want to.
No, not really.
Okay, fair.
I'll say C.
Fair.
I'll round it at C. But
All right.
that's
C.
it. We're done. Thank you,
Thank you
Senua.
to everyone.
Thank you, Ninja Theory. We really appreciate the game. And C isn't bad. A 7 out of 10 game is still, good. So
C's get degrees. That's what
C's
they
get
say.
degrees. C's get a report card from Video Game Book Club, baby. Benjamin, I
Yes,
picked
sir.
the game, then the community picked the game. I think it's your turn to pick a game. My man, what are we going to play for the month of my birthday? My birth month. What are we going to play?
That's a lot of pressure to put on me. We are going to play something that is very different than anything we've played kind of so far, with kind of a limited exception.
Okay.
The game I'm picking for August 2025 is Rain World. We're playing Rain World. Rain World, if you're not familiar, is a Metroidvania. You play as the Slug Cat. You are a little slug cat.
Slug?
Is a slug cat. It's like a hybrid between a slug and a cat.
Hell yeah.
And the game opens, you're separated from your family, the rest of the slug cat tribe, and pretty much the entire game is your experience trying to find your way back to them. And what that looks like is you basically trying to exist within this extremely harsh ecosystem. So in this game, they've built an incredibly complex ecosystem that you only play one very small part of. You're the little slug cat. All you can really do is throw stones and little sticks at things. That's it. And there's there's very scary stuff in the world that is trying to kill and eat you. So, you might be traversing through a room and there's a lizard in the room. And the lizard wants to eat you, and it's coming after you. But here's where the ecology kicks in. Because while the lizard might be trying to eat you, a different type of lizard might enter the room, and it doesn't like the other lizard. So they start fighting, and you have to use that kind of distraction to escape and to get away. So it's a very unique game. It's one of the most thoughtfully built ecologies and environments that's been made in gaming. I said it's kind of similar to something we've played in the past because I think the obvious comparison is Animal Well.
Sure.
But I think it's a very different experience than Animal Well, and one that I'm really excited to immerse myself in.
When you said Metroidvania, I immediately thought, okay, well, we played Nine Souls and then we played Animal Well, but it seems like it's very different than Nine Souls, as there is not really like a combat heavy focus on the game. I'm sure there's some sort of fighting, but if or not, is there not?
What I told you is pretty much it. You've got rocks and you've got sticks, and
okay.
you can throw them. That's it.
But so a question that I have you played a little bit of the game?
I've played about 2 hours of the game, so I can let you know what you're in for.
Okay.
The first hour of the game is going to be you just dying in brutal ways. You're gonna get eaten by lizards. You're gonna get killed by predatory poles that are mimicking themselves as stuff you want to climb. You're going to get killed by giant flying bugs that come in out of nowhere. You're just going to be dying in crazy ways. But each death teaches you something about the world. And as you go, you continue learning more and more until you really become a part of this ecosystem and you learn how to kind of navigate it.
Okay, understood. Hey, man. Hands up, you know what? I'm just gonna go and play that tonight and experience it for myself. I'm super excited for Rain World. I feel like it's a game that we've been maybe putting, we put it on the VGPC lineup and then we take it away. And then we say, oh, maybe we'll play it in a few months, and we put it in the lineup again and then we take it away. So I'm excited to finally break that and actually play Rain World this month, August 2025. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening and for being a part of the Video Game Book Club community. If you aren't a part of the Video Game Book Club community, then this is the perfect time to join. Join the club. We are just people that love playing games, love experiencing games, and talking about everything about the game, from how it was made, to the story, to the mechanics, to what we loved about it, to what we didn't like about it. And then we answer questions that make us think even more beyond the game. So thank you very much. And all of that is thanks to our community, really, because they push us to be, I guess, the two fools that you see right now in your screen. So thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for letting us be the voices in your head for the past 2 hours.
Exactly.
And if you like it, drop a like on the video, subscribe, follow us if you're listening to this as a podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, everything. We really appreciate it, and it helps us out.
We really do. And we will see you again in a couple of weeks for the checkpoint, and we will see you 2 weeks after that for our discussion on Rain World for the Video Game Book Club Game of the Month, August 2025. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.